Yada samharate chayam kurmonganiva sarvashaha indriyan indriyarthebhyaha tasya prajna pratisthita. So this wise person is compared to a tortoise or a turtle. Kurmaha. Kurmaha you might have heard, not kurma. Kurma is a dish. This is kurmaha. It's a very different thing. Kurma avatar. Vishnu took this avatar as well, one of the avatars. So here, this kurmaha is a turtle or a tortoise. What does a tortoise or a turtle do? Capacity to withdraw at will its limbs into the shell. It is totally protected in the shell, because whenever it wants, it can just withdraw itself into the shell. And this is exactly what a jnani, a wise person, is able to do. Nothing external pulls him anymore. But suppose something, it is these senses are very, very powerful. We'll see in the next verse. Even if you're wise, they can still, the energy, power of the senses, they can pull you due to certain vasanas, that residues that remain in the mind. So as soon as he feels a slight pull towards outside, what happens? Like a turtle, he withdraws the senses. It's not that he shuts his eyes and shuts off his ears. Not like that physically. Withdrawing means he has the ability, the mind which backs the senses, he is master of that mind. So withdrawing the senses means the power behind the senses are withdrawn from going out, so that energy is conserved. We have to understand this clearly. It is not avoiding the objects of the senses. That is not withdrawal from the senses. The withdrawal is that even with eyes open, the power, the eyes want to go out, or the mind wants to go out through the eyes. So in Shastra, it is said that the senses we cannot blame. Okay, senses are just data input. They just give data from the external world. They are always made scapegoats. They're always criticized and blamed in life. In fact, poor things, they have they have nothing to be criticized for. All they do is bring in data from the world. Skin brings in touch, objects of touch. When I touch an object, skin brings in knowledge of touch. Then eyes bring in knowledge of names and forms and colors. Ears bring in sound objects. I hear sounds. Nose brings smell. Mouth brings taste. So all of these are how I interact with the world. These 5 sense organs are given for me to interact with the world, and I need them to interact with the world. But if the senses aren't backed by the mind, they're useless, right? And we've seen this before. If your mind is not behind your ears, you can be very much present in this class, but if suppose you're thinking, oh, Diwali shopping, when is M&S going to close? I have to go and get some clothes now. We've only got 1 more week. Okay, when mind is somewhere else, then it is not behind the ears. It's not bucking the ears, right? So knowledge will not take place. So the mind has to be behind the senses for knowledge to take place. And that is why mind is the most important key. Whether you can control or manage the powers of the senses going outward, or you can rein them in and keep that energy inside. And it is a huge energy. If you can, that is what we call tapas. When the mind wants to go behind the eyes, you see something very beautiful and the mind immediately wants, oh, I want it. First thought is that whenever we see something very beautiful, eyes are the biggest culprit actually, because the eyes draw all the senses behind them, right? Eyes see, oh, jalebi, look at that, fantastic. Tongue starts drooling, then everything, your touch wants to touch it, and your taste wants to taste it. So the eyes are the main culprit actually. Soon as eyes fall on something, all the other sense organs are also invoked. And when the mind backs something, the desire, we want to fulfill the desire. This is how it works. Then we want to possess that thing. We want to make that thing ours and enjoy that particular sense object. So this is what this verse is talking about. This jnani has the capacity, even if he sees jalebi, yes, mind will want to go out there. He may get a bit of, drooly tongue as well, because he wants to taste that jalebi, but the power is immediately pulled back within himself. And that desire that has arisen in the mind, as it arises, it resolves. As desires arise, they resolve. Very beautiful. He has the power to do that. And he will definitely go after desires which are conducive for loka sangraham of our other people. There's no harm. As the desire comes, he will choose which desire he should go after. Eating jalebi is not going to help the world. So he's not going to make that a priority in his life, right? So this is how he's saying the kurmaha, as it withdraws, it is sensory, regulates the senses and the power it withdraws. So this knowledge is firm. And what does he know? This jnani, there's a very beautiful verse in Nirvana Shakam. Maybe you learned it one day. It's 6 verses written by Adi Shankara, very beautiful verses. And it begins with Mano Buddhya Hankara Chittani Naham. So neither am I the mind, nor the intelligence, nor the ego, nacha shrotra jihve, nacha grana netre. So I'm not the shrotra, I'm not the eyes, I'm not the tongue, I am not the grana, I'm not the sense of touch, the seeing. So I'm not the nose, I'm not even the sight. Then nacha vyomo bhumihi, nat tejo navayuhu. I am not vyoma, I'm not space, I'm not this earth, I'm not fire, I'm not air. Chidananda Rupaha Shivoham Shivoham. I'm that pure, limitless joy, consciousness. I am Shiva, I am Shiva. Shiva means auspiciousness. Shivoham Shivoham. I am more auspicious. How can that auspicious me be dragged by the elements and the elementals? How can that auspicious me be dragged by the sense pleasures as well? So this type of this jnani has got to this stage by meditating on such verses. Nididhyasanam is one method to discover the truth of oneself, and he's discovered total independence from externals. So this protective shell, like a turtle, is always there. Kurmaha angani samharate, like a turtle withdraws its limbs to itself. He has a sense withdrawal, and not just sense withdrawal. We've seen there's 2 types of organs. There's organs of knowledge, which are the sense organs, and there's organs of action, which are the hands, the legs, all these organs of action we saw in Tattva Bodha, the things that are, we interact with the world. So the senses bring in knowledge of the world, and with that knowledge, I interact with these organs of actions. So he has no problem with addictions. Addictions, this verse also talks about, if the senses go after things so much, there's a danger of addiction. If you allow your mind, weak-minded people get addicted to things very quickly, and the strength of the mind is lost. So this verse says one has to make the mind strong. One has to prop up the mind with how do we start by propping up the mind? How do we make our mind strong? Well, this chanting, all of this helps. Any kind of sadhana helps. But number 1 thing prescribed in our scripture for making the mind strong is satsangam, the company of the good. Nothing to beat the company of good. If you surround yourself with good people with like-minded pursuits, it is like a sapling, a tree. It is surrounded by a small fence, and it has a stick, right, to make it grow properly. It is exactly like that. When you're beginning on the spiritual pursuit, if you have good company, be in good company, and everybody's practicing the same thing, then you can grow into a big tree where you don't need support anymore. So at the beginning, support is required through the company of people. So it is very, very dangerous. This verse says, if I let my senses go wild, if I let my senses take me for a ride, addiction is the problem. And it's really difficult. I have to go cold turkey. I may have to go cold turkey. I don't know whether you know of this. You've heard this phrase, cold turkey, where it comes from. I actually was interested. Where does this phrase cold turkey come from? What does it mean? They usually use it for drug addicts, right? When they're not able to get off the drug, or alcoholics, they go cold turkey. They keep them away from that object, sense pleasure, for a length of time. And they get withdrawal symptoms and everything. And this is exactly where cold turkey, the phrase, comes from. It is like a turkey that's apparently been kept in a fridge When it's been refrigerated for a long time, when you take the turkey out with its feathers all plucked out, by the way, there are all these goosebumps like on the skin of the turkey. So this is exactly what happens to an addict when he's withdrawn from the object of the sense, the pleasure, that particular pleasure he's attached to. His skin gets turkey-like skin. So that's why they say go cold turkey. So we don't want to get to that stage where we have to go cold turkey and look like a refrigerated turkey. This is why it's very important to practice sense withdrawal, samharate, very beautiful. And where from? He says, Bhagavan says in this verse, sarvashaha, from all directions, because senses go in all directions. So from all directions, indriyani, indriyarthebhyaha. So the wise one is the one who can at will, if the eyes go one way, he can take his eyes away, and he judiciously and intelligently knows which sense object he should go after, or if he needs to go for anything. So we saw this value also in chapter 13 when we were studying Indriyartheshu Vairagyam. If you remember, whoever is studying the values in the Friday class, it is exactly the same value that Bhagavan brings up again and again in the Bhagavad Gita. So it is very important as a spiritual aspirant, as a student of Bhagavad Gita, that I don't neglect this side of spiritual growth as well. That's why we have vratas like Ekadashi, at least once every 2 weeks during the 11th day, Krishna Paksha, Shukla Paksha, the dark phase of the moon or the light phase of the moon. What is that? We restrict our tongue, or we practice such sense withdrawal, so we don't get attached to objects of our taste or anything like that. So this requires tremendous willpower. Everything in life, if you can develop your willpower, you can achieve anything. You can move mountains if you have strong willpower in life. And this is what Bhagavad Gita helps you to see. More and more, you withdraw the senses from the sense objects, you'll find an inner Shakti. It is called the Shakti of tapas that rises in you. And that Shakti, that power, can be used in a different direction, a more conducive direction, more useful direction for you. So tremendous alertness, that is what we need in life. And it is not so easy at all. It is very, very difficult. Bhagavan acknowledges that even the wise falter. And in the next verse, he will say that. He says, Vishaya vinivartante niraharasya dehinaha rasavarjam brasopyasya param drishtva nivartate. So this verse, what does it talk about? It talks about Ajnani, but it also explains the problems that people will have as well with sense object. What is that? Even if the sense object is not around, if you've developed an attachment towards something, what is it? If you leave that sense object, what this verse says, that the longing continues to remain in your mind. The longing may still be there for you in your mind. So it's actually in another verse in chapter 3, we'll see, Bhagavan actually calls him a mityachara. He is a hypocrite, because you withdraw yourself from the senses, sense objects, and you sit there contemplating on that object that you had moved away from. No, it doesn't work like that. That is not sense management. That is why Bhagavan is talking in this verse about, with understanding what this withdrawal is. So Vishaya vinivartante, it means the sense powers turn within. Vishaya vinivartante, sense powers can turn inwards. With tapas and discipline, they turn inwards. But rasavarjam remains. Rasavarjam means mental fancy for that object. So you may be able to withdraw, the sense objects. And what remains? That rasavarjam. That's a taste, that's a residue still in the mind. You still crave for it. And you have to keep practicing, and it's very, very difficult to avoid. That is what he's saying, that addiction. Mind cannot stop thinking about that particular object. So what happens? You spend your life in mental fantasies. Yes, you saw the latest Tesla car. I want it. But then, you said, I'm managing my senses. I withdraw from that desire of Tesla. But you go home, what do you think of? Tesla, dream, Tesla. all the time having that object in your mind. So actually what Shastra prescribes is that it is better, in fact, to grow out of your desires, go through your desires, grow out of your desires, rather than have a mind which is constantly bombarded with desires which are not fulfilling. Just because we are spiritual, we say, we say, withdraw the mind from the sense objects. And you do that because it is said in the Gita, sense objects are impermanent, all of that, but you still cannot assimilate the fact and you still crave for certain things in life. Shastra actually says, go through that, get that object of desire, work for it, but do it in a dharmic way. But you have to grow out of it one day. One day that rasa, that longing itself will go. And more prudent way to grow out of is by doing vichara. If you have an intellect that can discriminate between what is permanent and what is impermanent in life, that is an even more prudent way. You don't have to waste your time, money, energy to gain the objects of your senses and then finally realize, my God, it's not really given me the satisfaction I thought it would give me. Instead of going through all that process and finally realizing if the mind can discriminate and foo-foo the desire away, that is the best way. But some desires, Bhagavan will talk about in chapter 3 about the nature of desires. Some desires do not go so easily. They're very deeply ingrained in the mind. And the only way that they'll go is through the fulfillment. So once you fulfill, you will feel happy for a length of time, and you will realize it has not given you the full satisfaction, because nothing in the world can give you full satisfaction. That is a fact of the Shastra. But go through them. Don't keep them in your mind. That's what this verse says. So this is how one learns to grow. And how do we learn to grow out of this? We learn to grow out by holding on to something greater, by holding on to something bigger. The value of what I thought I wanted, this desire, becomes much less because something greater becomes more valuable to me. He says that here. So first of all, this niraharasya dehinaha, who is this? He's talking about now a wise person, the one who doesn't feed the senses. Ahara means food. So the one who is not stuffing the body with the sense objects, ahara, that type of food. What happens to such a person? So food for the physical body goes through the mouth, but food for the subtle body is through the other senses. It goes through the other senses, but he doesn't let the food all bombard him, because param drishtva nivartate, the higher pursuit has replaced these lower pursuit. Param drishtva nivartate, all of these things, the interest has fallen off. It is not that he's purposefully getting rid of his desires and things like that. We never say get rid of desires. What has happened to a wise person? The interest has gone for him because he's holding on to the higher pursuit. He sees that as more value, and he sees that that is what is going to give him joy in the end. So these spending sprees and these, going shopping sprees and all of that, he doesn't have interest in them anymore. And actually, people who study Bhagavad Gita, Vedanta, I know I've got lots of students in India who've told me this experience after they did some shravanam for a length of time. So their life became so simple by the shravanam, by the listening, the teaching itself. So many desires dropped off, and they actually gave away their clothes. They gave away so much things in their house that they didn't need. Just had a big spring clean. And when I used to go to Bhiksha to some of their homes, there was hardly anything there. Everything was given away. Nice, big spaces, especially in India, when you clear up. So that kind of that vairagya comes in the mind when you realize, my God, why am I holding on to so many things, this clutter? What do I really need all this stuff for? And when that type of vairagya starts coming, you will definitely make your life more simple. This more simple, fewer needs. You won't need all of that anymore. Not forcefully get rid of things. It will happen naturally. So no longing, he says here, param drishtva nivartate. There's a beautiful story in Katha Upanishad. Maybe one day we will see Upanishad as well. Katha Upanishad, of a young boy. You may have heard the story, Nachiketas. He meets Lord Yama. He's sent to death, Lord of Death, by his own father, because his father is very angry with him. And because being a young boy, very pure-minded, pure-hearted, he points out his father is performing Vajashravas. So he's performing big yajna. And this yajna is a fire ritual where he's offering a lot of things to the Brahmins and a lot of things to the community. In those days, these Vedic rituals you had to do for them, the ritual to be complete, you had to do a lot of dhanam, a lot of charity. And he sees his father giving away old decrepit cows that, and it's very interesting. In the Upanishad, the verse is described, they cannot even chew grass and eat, they have no teeth, they have no milk to give, nothing, they're emaciated cows. And he sees his father giving the cow. So I can imagine how the Upanishad describes, he's pulling at his father's dhoti, he's only 8 years old or something. So why are you giving such bad cows away? You will not get good results if you give bad cows away. And the father said, shut up, quiet, be quiet. No. And the conscience of this, boy speaking like the conscience of the father, no. And he's bugging his father. So finally he says, basically in English, it would be translated, go to hell, right? So he says, go to Yama, go to Lord Yama. And the Upanishad story goes like that. He goes to Yama. He goes to Yamaloka. Yama is the Lord of Death. So he goes to the Yamaloka, and what happens? The Lord of Death is on holiday. He's away for 3 days, obviously picking up dead people in different parts of the universe. So he's out for 3 days. This poor boy is stuck outside Yamaloka, the gates of the Yamaloka, and he's waiting. And it is a sin to leave a guest waiting like that. That is also said in the scripture. So there's Yama, when he returns, he sees this boy sitting there and he gets very perturbed. Oh, you're sitting here, you're waiting. I've not done my duty. I've not taken care of the guest, and you're very exalted Brahmana boy, and I should have taken care of you. So instead he says, I give you 3 boons. I'll give you 3 boons. And what does this boy ask? Well, the first boon is for his father. Okay, he wants his father to be, he wants his father's anger to subside. Very beautifully he says. And within that boon, he asks also, when I go back to earth, let my father's anger not be there. So in the first boon, he gets 2 boons because he gets to go back to earth. So Yama says, yes. Second boon, he asks for the whole world. He asks for a certain ritual which will help the whole world. So he's thinking about the whole world. And then the last boon he asks is for himself. And what does he ask? What happens after death? You are the one who can tell me. You are the Lord of death. Is there something? People tell me that there is something that survives after death. Who better to tell me than you? You are death personified. You are the Lord of death. You tell me. So Yama did not like this. He tried to deflect the question. He didn't like Nachiketa's young boy to choose such a question because it's not so easy to get this answer. So he refused to answer. And he says, I'll give you wealth. You can become the Lord of this whole, I give you entire kingdom, even the whole world. You can become the Lord of the world. All the pleasures of life I will give you. Anything but the truth about death. I will not talk about this. And still Nachiketas, whatever he was offered, at the age of 8, the Upanishad says, he says, no, I insist. All I want to know is about Atma. And he stayed firm with this question. Please, Lord Yama, dispel this doubt of mine. Oh, Lord of death, does a person live on after he dies? Or where does he go after he dies? What happens? I want to know. And then Yama finally gives him the knowledge of Brahma Vidya, gives him self-knowledge that there is a continuation. Nobody, in fact, there's no such thing as death at all. There's a continuation. There's only death for the physical body, but there is continuation for after. So this is exactly what a jnani, a person who wants to know the truth, will be like. These pleasures of the senses, they are not going to give me. That young boy, discerning boy, knew that they're not going to give him the truth of life. They're not going to give him what he really wants. So he says here, the last, asya raso api nivartate. For such a person, the longing, even though he's in the middle of all the sense objects, he's in the middle of all the experiences he could have, the longing is no longer there. Asya raso api nivartate. His longing goes. And the more one understands Ishvara, the more secure one feels, more relaxed the person feels. And this is exactly a jnani. He understands that order. He's more relaxed. And in all enjoyments, he won't stop enjoying. If enjoyments come to him without him chasing them, he will still enjoy. He goes for bhiksha in somebody's house. He goes to have food. He's invited. And there's a big spread, big feast. He will enjoy everything moderately. He will enjoy, and he will enjoy the taste. He will enjoy everything. But what is his drishti? What is his vision? Everything is the Lord. His ananda is the Lord. Even his enjoyments, he sees the Lord in his enjoyments. So all his vision is Ishvara alone, and therefore no attachment at all. So with that, I will just stop for today.